Hi, my name is Jess and I'm going to share some tips and tricks on how to handle snakes. So my pet snake that I'm going to be using to give these tips and tricks is actually still a juvenile, and I kind of wanted to show you guys his tank before I get him out. So since he is still so small, he is only living in a 30-gallon long, and he only has basic little hides and things because he's still so tiny. So as you can see, he has some of these just plain paper towel holders. He has a couple of them on the warm end and some on the cool end. He has a nice big water dish he could soak in if he wants to. He has a humid hide full of moss that's constantly misted, and he has hides on his hot end if he wanted to bask. He is also living on an aspen bedding at the moment. I usually try to shake it out and sift through it so it's not quite as dusty, but it's really good for burrowing snakes and it doesn't leave that big of a mess. So as you can see, I just opened up his humid hide and he's been hanging out in here a lot, and he just shed recently, so it's not quite as moist in here as it would usually be. But the first tip I wanted to talk about when it comes to picking up snakes, you can kind of see he's curious. He's obviously used to me and he's smelling me. But when you go to pick up a snake, no matter how familiar you are with it, if you don't go in with confidence, you're going to make the animal nervous. So if Norman wasn't as used to me as he is, but I'm reaching right towards his face, or I'm reaching directly up above him and I'm not going to pick him up with confidence, it's not really going to work because he is nervous and he is going to be scared. So whenever you're picking up snakes, even if you're a little bit scared yourself, it's best to go in with a confidence and just pick them up. And usually you obviously will want to pick the snake up somewhere towards the back or the middle. You don't want to reach for their face, especially if they're nervous. So like I said, this is Norman. He's a scaleless rat snake. He is about 1.5 years old, and I've had him since before his first shed, so I've had him for quite a while. With snakes, it's really important that if you want them to be handleable, you keep them to a kind of schedule. You try to handle them for 10-15 minutes a day, or every other day if you can't do every day. And that's important because it just gets them used to it. It gets them used to the handling, used to you, used to the environment that they're in. It is, of course, going to be a lot easier if you get a snake when it's young, when it's a hatchling, for it to get used to you. But I do also want to say that it's never too late to start trying. Even if you've had a snake for a few years and you still just can't seem to handle it, it's still getting food aggressive or bitey, it's not too late to try. And especially if you're not seeing the results you want, it's really important to not give up trying. It's important to have patience because some snakes do take a while. They do some take a few days, some take a few months, and some may even take years depending on their temperament, the species they are, things like that. So I do just want to say never give up trying. Just be patient, and if you keep to it, you will see the results that you want. I did say that I recommend the 10 to 15 minutes a day every other day of handling, but it's also important to know your pet and to sense their own stress levels. We know like a lot of snakes will tail buzz, or they'll let you know when they're getting stressed out. And if that's an excessive thing, then maybe you do need to start off slower, just a few minutes here and there. Maybe just simply even putting your hand in the tank, letting them feel your presence, things like that. So it is important to know your animal and know their own levels as well. So a lot of snakes that have trouble with handling, it is due to food aggression and not knowing the difference between when it's time to be handled and when it's time to be fed. So with that in mind, I would not recommend holding your snake before eating for multiple reasons. This could lead to your snake associating your hands with food, or handling time meaning feeding is coming soon. It is also actually harmful to hold your snake after it eats because they do risk the regurgitation of their food if they get too stressed or get too scared, and we obviously don't want that to happen. It is also not as common, but I have seen some other people do it, and it sounds kind of silly, but there is this thing called target training. And what it is you basically show them something that's a specific color, a specific object, whenever you're about to feed them. When I got Norman, like I said, he hadn't even had his first shed yet. He was teeny tiny. And all I had, which sounds really silly, was this little rubber octopus. Now, Norman knows when I show him this, when he's in his tank, I let him sniff it. He knows that he comes out and that he's probably going to get a mouse, that he's going to get fed. And I know that sounds silly and you're thinking snakes can't think that, snakes can't learn that, but I've seen it with my own animals and I've seen other people do it as well. So that's just another small little thing you could implement that would help your snake distinguish between feeding time and handling time. So just a quick recap on everything I said. It is important that you go in with confidence. It's important that you keep to a schedule, that you don't give up, that you have patience, that you keep trying. And it probably isn't going to be very easy for some species and some pets because they are striky, they are bitey, they are food motivated. So it's just really important to not give up on your animal because eventually you will see the results that you're hoping for. And it is also important to know your own limitations and your animal's limitations. If the 10 minutes isn't working for them, isn't working for you, then start off smaller. It is also important that just because this has worked for me and I've seen other people do it and it's worked for Norman and it's worked for my other reptiles, doesn't mean that it'll give you the results that you're looking for. So like I said, it is important to do your research. It's important to find other methods if one isn't working for you. And it's just important to not give up, especially when there's so much information out there and you can find so much on what you're looking for. So just because this worked for me and Norman and all the other reptiles that I have, doesn't necessarily mean it will work for you, but I've seen great results with it. I've seen other keepers have great results with that kind of method, that kind of scheduling. So it really just depends on you and depends on your animal.